Hey friend, today on the broadcast here on Bible Tract Echoes, we're going to talk about a concept that maybe, just maybe, will appeal to the more mature members of my audience. What I mean by that is totally appropriate. What I mean by that is this: Dr. Paul Levin is continuing his message, Are You Afraid to Die?, from many years ago in 1995. And he talks about this concept today. He points out that we who will pass over, all of us, if the Lord doesn't return soon, we're all going to step over into glory. And you're not, when that happens, you are not going to miss your body. Maybe there's some listening right now, maybe of the older clientele, you'd say, yeah, I think that's true. I've got this new ache or pain that I woke up with today, or I overexerted myself yesterday. You know, young folks bounce back so quickly. I'm a little sore from some exertion that I put my body through not too long ago, and yes, I may bounce back quicker now than I will later on, but I'll tell you this, if I ever did go to heaven, which, Lord willing, will be not too soon, but sometime in the future, I'm not going to be interested in coming back, because it's so great. So while you listen today, Dr. Paul's going to tell us a fun little story. He's going to talk about, through the lens of the Apostle Paul and a trip that he took. I want you to listen. I want you to listen intently. I want you to realize and kind of allow this truth to permeate a little bit. You're not going to want to come back. You're not going to miss your body. Listen now to Dr. Paul from this message, Are You Afraid to Die?, preached by our founder in 1995.
If we could go to heaven tonight without dying, we'd all want to go to heaven. But if we all want to go to heaven, and we all want to go to heaven now, but if we have to go across death to get there, we'll just stay here a while. That's the way we are. Now let's turn to another passage. Let me show you something. 2 Corinthians chapter 12. 2 Corinthians chapter, boy, this is tremendous for me. I don't know how it'll be for you, but this sure does help me. Now, if I ever preached this here before, you'll have to pardon me. I'm getting a little old now. I'm like two fellows were talking, and one of them said to the other. Now, they shook hands. They said, now, listen. Said, I'm a little bit forgetful. Was that you who died, or was that your brother? I've forgotten. All right, 2 Corinthians chapter 12. Now, here Paul, the Apostle Paul, is going to tell us about a trip that he made to paradise. So remember that while we read it. He's talking about a trip to paradise and back. Now let's look at verse 2. I knew a man. Paul is talking about himself here, but he doesn't say so. And I don't know why. I've never met Paul yet. But when I get to heaven, I'm going to ask him, how come you just come right out and say that you're the fellow that made this trip to paradise instead of saying that you knew a fellow that did? I don't know why. Maybe it's because he was very humble. But anyway, he says, I knew a man in Christ. That means this man was a saved man. 14 years ago, that's when this happened. 14 years ago. Now, if you figure 14 years ago, from the time he wrote this, some of the scholars tell us it'll take you to about the time in Paul's life when he was stoned at a town called Lystra, and they thought he was dead. See, they wanted him dead so much that they were going to be mighty sure that they left him for dead. And that's about 14 years back. That's what he mentions that right here. All right, I knew a man himself in Christ, saved man, 14 years ago. Now notice in parentheses, you got your eyes on the Bible, haven't you? Look what it says there. Whether in the body, I cannot tell. Or whether out of the body, I cannot tell. God knows. What's he talking about anyhow? Look, here's what he's saying. He's saying, when I made my trip to the third heaven into paradise, I don't know whether I went in my body or not. That's what he's saying. I don't know. He said, God knows that. But he says, I don't know. Now, he either went in his body or he didn't. Personally, I don't believe he went to paradise in his body. I don't believe that these mortal bodies that we have now could stand the trip between here and the third heavens. See, I don't believe that. I believe he just went in his spirit, and wherever his body was on earth, it was a dead body. When Paul went to paradise, we don't know how long he was there, but he was there for a while and came back. And while he was gone into paradise, his body was a dead body. And he said it was 14 years ago, and that might be when he was stoned at Lystra. So that's what he's talking about. I don't know whether I was in my body or not. Now look at the rest of verse 2. He says, such a one, talking about himself again now, caught up into the third heaven. You see, he's talking about his trip into the third heaven. He says, I don't know if I had my body with me when I went there. But he says, I know I went there. All right, look at the next verse. Verse 3. Now, in verse 3, he says almost the same thing. He says, I knew such a man, whether in the body or out of the body, I cannot tell, God knows. Now, why did he repeat that? He just said so once. Why do you have to go and say it again? Well, that's the way God emphasizes things in the Bible. Well, when you men go hunting, you go away for a couple of weeks hunting or fishing, then you write your wife every day, don't you? And tell her how much you love her and how you miss her. You wives, isn't that right? You get a letter from him every day while he's gone. Okay. And so when he wants to emphasize how much he loves you, he underlines it in red or something. That's the way you emphasize when you write letters. God doesn't do it that way. God just says it twice. Verily, verily, I say unto you. He could have said verily once, but he didn't. He said it twice. When he said verily, wake up. Verily, wake up. I got something to tell you. Now, whenever you find something repeated in the Bible, it's important. So this has got to be important. He repeats this twice. I knew such a man, whether in the body or out of the body, I cannot tell. Whether I was alive physically or dead physically when I went up there, I don't know. I don't know if I had my body with me. Now listen to me. If he didn't know whether or not he had his body, and I don't believe he had it, let me change that. If he didn't have his body, I don't believe he had it. If he didn't have it, or let's say since he didn't have it, he didn't miss it. Because if he'd have missed it, he wouldn't have come back and say, I don't know whether I had it or not. The fact of the business is, he didn't have his body, and he didn't miss it. And when you and I die, it's going to be the same way. We get to thinking about what they're going to do with our body after we die. Oh, you're not going to worry about that after you die. Because you're going to go to paradise, and it's going to be the same as if you had your body. Because Paul says, they went up there, in verse 4, he said he was caught up into paradise. Boy, now you know where paradise is. Paradise is in the third heaven. He said he was caught up into paradise and heard unspeakable words, which it is not lawful or possible for a person to utter. So he's telling about this wonderful experience. And he says that when he went up there to paradise, he doesn't know whether he had his body or not, which shows that if he didn't have it, he didn't miss it. Now, if he didn't miss it when he went to heaven, you're not going to miss yours when you go to heaven either. See? We don't care what the embalmers and the undertakers do with our body. When we go to heaven, it's going to be the same as we have our body, Brother Dave. See? That's wonderful thought, you know. I don't know if that thrills you, but man, that gets me all worked up. That makes me happy to know about this. Now, let me give you just three things briefly then about the Apostle Paul. Number one was his delight. His delight was this trip to paradise and back. Now his desire. What was his desire? His desire, years later, he wrote about his desire in Philippians chapter 1, and he says, I'm in a strait betwixt two, having a desire to depart and be with Christ. He's talking about dying. See? After having made the trip to paradise and come back, well, how about that, Paul? Are you scared? No. Scared to die again? No. Are you trembling in fear now? You're going to have to die? No. No. He says, I have a desire to die and be with Christ because it's so much better there than it is here. See? That was his desire. Having once made the trip, he wanted to make it again by death, even if he had to. Not by the rapture. He's talking about dying. He says it was so wonderful, this trip I made to paradise, so wonderful, that even if I have to die to get there, I want to go. See? Boy, that's great. Let me illustrate. When I was a kid on the farm, the folks across the road from us had a great big, what they call a gully on their farm. Great, big hill on each side, in a valley down there. It was a big hill. A deep valley. And there's an elm tree on each side, and they strung a cable from the elm tree on this side across this chasm to the elm tree over on this side. And then on a cable, for you boys and girls, what's a cable? A cable is a rope that won't break. That's what a cable is. Okay, so now they got this cable up there, and on top of it, they got a wheel. They call it a pulley. And this wheel runs, it's got a groove in it, and it runs on top of this rope that won't break. This pulley, cable. Okay, then coming down from this wheel that runs on top of the cable, had a rope 3 feet long. And then they said to us kids, now you get up on the hill over here, see, and get back as far as you can come, and then start running down the hill. Run down that hill as fast as you can go, and after a while, you'll be hanging out there in the air. And you just hang on, and that thing will take you right across, and you'll land on the other side. Well, I don't know what the other kids were thinking, but I was thinking, how do they know it'll go across? We've never seen anybody go across. How do we know? And I said to myself, what if it stops in the middle? Nobody had brains enough to tie a long rope onto the short one so you could slide down the long one if the thing stopped in the middle. Nobody thought of that. There were no helicopters around. No way to put a ladder down there. If that thing stopped in the middle, there was only one thing you could do, and that was to confess a whole lot of sins you'd already confessed a couple of dozen times, and finally let go and get killed. That's the only thing you could do. Oh, boy. I looked at that thing, and I thought, man, I don't know about going across on that. We don't know if that'll go across. Then all of a sudden, we lined up. We're going to take turns. And you know how kids are. Everybody wants to go first. All of us kids were standing there. Well, now, if you want to go first, that's all right. No, you can go first. That's all right with me. There wasn't any of us kids scared, but we were all polite. Politest bunch of kids you ever saw. and finally, a guy came out of the farmhouse there, a guy about 18 years old, big guy. And he says, I'll try it. Oh, I looked at him and I thought, man, what a hero. Boy, he's brave. And I thought, this was about the time that Milton, I forgot his first name, Lindbergh. Charles Lindbergh flew across the Atlantic Ocean in an airplane. And I thought to myself, boy, this guy that's going to ride across there, he's a hero. Lindbergh was a piker compared to him because Lindbergh had an airplane with a motor in it. And he had a radio, and he had some gasoline. And all this guy's got is a rope 3 foot long. And so he got up there on the hill, and I started to pray because my mother taught me to pray about everything. Boy, I started to pray, and I was peeking too while I was praying, And here he went down the hill, and the next thing you know, his feet were dangling in the air. And I could hear that pulley up there, clickety, 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 click, going. And he just kept right on going and going and going. And finally his feet hit on the other side over here. And when he did, he turned around and he said to us kids up there, he said, it was fun. I'd like to go again. See? That's what Paul said. I went to paradise and came back. Man, that was wonderful. I wouldn't mind dying again. I have a desire to depart.
Don't you just love Dr. Paul? What a fun character he was. I'm looking forward to when I get to heaven, getting to reminisce with him a little bit. Maybe sitting down for a meal of heavenly food. I'm not sure what that'll look like, but either way, I'm excited to spend some time with Dr. Paul. But if you're listening right now, and you'd say, I'm not sure if I'd ever go meet Dr. Paul, where he is, I should say, in heaven. If you're not sure you're going there, today would be the absolute best day to get that settled. Every single day this week, we've made this plea. If you don't know of your eternal destiny, you're not sure, reach out to me. I'll give you a phone number whereby you can do that in just a moment. I realize what time of year it is. I realize it's around Christmas time, but did you know that suicide rates are higher around this time of year than any other time in the year? There are some desperate, depressed, discouraged, and downtrodden people, and some of you may be listening to this broadcast right now. I don't say that to denigrate you. I don't say that to put you down. I'm telling you there's hope. I'm telling you there's more to life. So I'd ask you, if you'd like that hope, would you reach out to me? You can text me at 309-316-7240. Let me give you that number one more time, a little more slowly. Grab a notepad, a pen, maybe enter it into your phone right now. Please text me. And Christian friend, if you want to get some gospel tracts so you can share the hope that only comes through Jesus Christ, reach out to me as well. I'll send you the link to our website, BibleTractsInc.org. Text me at 309-316-7240. Now, tomorrow on the broadcast, it's the last day, the last segment of Dr. Paul's message, Are You Afraid to Die? I'm excited to share that with you. Make sure you tune in to Bible Tract Echoes. I'm Mike McCurry, your host. I want to say a heartfelt thank you. And if by some chance we don't connect again before Christmas, Merry Christmas as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful day, a great day for His glory. And we'll plan on talking to you soon. God bless.